time that we agree upon, and in the end I've paid off the house when I've provided you a sum of my own production, which we have deemed to be equal to your production. So this is a true free market, and it's not, what it lacks is it's not actually monetizing our production. The next step above this is something which I explained since 1975 in my essay, which is called Parable of Perfect Economy, which provides two examples, the second being a flawed embedded fault, which actually explains the fact that there's no such thing as spending money into circulation when we are also claiming to solve inflation. But in the case of this first example, we're explaining this primitive example where I promise to pay something off, and as each time I do, you're holding this promissory obligation, and you cancel off what I've paid toward you, and there's a balance left. Now, in the second innovation, we might decide amongst each other that we would circulate my promissory obligation as a representation of the wealth that I've committed to providing you. And in so doing, we allow ourselves to sustain the fullest prosperity possible. Why? Although I cannot pay for your home today, my promise to pay being good and being enforceable, and it is only good and enforceable under mathematically perfected economy, as we'll soon understand here. Being as that's the case, we monetize the will. So we create the $100,000, we award it to you, the true creditor, the only creditor, who gives up property in exchange for the promissory obligation. Now you can spend that money across the circulation without impediment or offense, if and only if the integrity of the obligation is enforced. Now, how do we do that? We do that by paying off the principal and retiring it from circulation at the rate of consumption or depreciation of the related property. What does what I just said mean then to the people? That means that we pay this $100,000 home off, this $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan. We pay it off. We divide the lifespan into the value, 100 years into $100,000, and we come up with $1,000 a year is the cost of this home. So I'm committed then to pay off this home at the rate of $1,000 a year, or $83.33 a month. And of course, we understand then that all that mathematically perfected economy is an eradication of exploitation, which we call, to our own great discredit, economy. It's not an economy at all what we're subject to.
That's right, and it's important that people understand that the whole idea of money revolves around the idea of me being able to enter into a contract with anybody to promise to do anything. And the fact that we're monetizing that promise is what makes the economy go. But it's actually the same promise that I could make to anybody. I could say to Tom, I promise that I'm going to be at your house on Saturday morning to help you build your fence.
Exactly.
It's no different than that. And because it's a monetized promise, the bankers have decided they want to add interest to it. But it's just as ridiculous to add interest to a promise that needs to be monetized to buy a house as it would be to say to have Tom say to me, well, maybe you can come help me fix my fence, but at the end of it, you're still going to owe me something.
Right, exactly. And the further thing is that if the banking system is the rightful issuer of our promissory obligations to each other, then in truth, as any contract exists as a promissory obligation. Contracts only exist to pay something at some future time, because if it were to be paid now, it would be.
It would be discharged immediately.
Right. So all contracts in effect are promissory obligations, and the banking system has intervened upon our right to issue our promissory obligations free of exploitation, which is the whole issue, and which you can only understand if you understand this life cycle, natural life cycle of a promissory obligation.
And this falls, for the Christians who are listening, this falls right in place with Christ's statement to render unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and unto God the things that are God's. So If you're a Christian, you make promises to God with regard to the spiritual side of your life, and with regards to the temporal side, you have obligations as well, because we need to eat, we need to clothe ourselves, and we need to put a roof over our heads. And to have one side completely rob the other, or in either way, is completely unacceptable. And
Of course, usury is forbidden, and in ancient times from which religious texts descend, the terminology had no means even of distinguishing between what we call interest today and usury as purportedly distinct.
yeah, and not just usury, but I mean, at the time of my understanding is Ur of the Chaldees, at the time of Abraham's father going in and out of his belief or following, doing what Abraham did, they initiated the compound interest. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding, where they actually got not just into the interest, but the compound interest, where it started to go downhill in a hurry.
Um, uh, Compound interest is actually, the term refers to the way that interest is calculated. And in terms of how that may apply to paying off this home, for instance, we've just explained how a home under $100,000 home with a 100-year lifespan would cost us $1,000 a year, or $83.33 a month under mathematically perfected economy. Under this obfuscation of the currency, which we haven't finished explaining, the cost of that home would be approximately $1,000 a month, or 12 times as much. Now, though the interest rate may be said to be 7% or 5% or whatever, at the same time, what's actually happening is if you look at the report from the bank of your first payment, of that first $1,000 that you paid toward that house, $999.50 might have gone toward interest. So what's the real rate of interest that you're paying? Especially if every, say, 5 or 10 years you might sell that house, move to another place, buy a new house, and start off paying most of your payments again toward interest. In any case, the costs of the house periodically are approximately 12 times as much under this present obfuscation of the currency, which is imposed by the banking system without qualification or justification. And we can only understand if this imposition is justifiable if we understand this obfuscation of the currency. So, in any case, our second level of improving, which is an improvement upon our original primitive promissory obligation, where we don't monetize the debt, but I just pay you, some of my production over time, and this cancels off what I've owed you, and eventually we trade production for like volume of production, and it's paid off. But we haven't monetized this, which provides me with a circulation to earn that money from you, so to speak, through whatever I do throughout the true economy, which is an economy. Economy means absolute eradication of all redundant cost and inefficiency. And so, in fact, this system is terminal because of the obfuscation of the currency. So we need to go through the obfuscation. So the second level is that we together, through government perhaps, might issue this $100,000 into circulation, pay it to you, and you can spend it as you will. But you have a concern then that the integrity of the money is sustained, and so do I, as what we consider to be the debtor, and I prefer to call obligor. Why? Because in truth, I don't have a $100,000 debt. I have obligated myself to pay against a $100,000 debt as I consume of the related property. So I'm actually only paying for what I consume as I consume of it. And so my obligation is to pay $1,000 a year, or $83.33 a month. And because the rate of payment is the rate of consumption or depreciation, guess what happens? This maintains a circulation which is always equal to the remaining value of the related property. As the first year transpires and I paid $1,000 off against this $100,000 debt, $99,000 of circulation remains, and the remaining value of the house is $99,000. So, being as this is how we would monetize our wealth correctly and our production correctly, this obligatory schedule of payment under mathematically perfected economy and eradication of interest, which are both vital, are what are the only thing, the only cycle of a promissory obligation, which is the only vehicle for monetizing wealth, the only conducive vehicle for monetizing our wealth. This maintains a perpetual one-to-one relationship between remaining circulation, remaining value of represented wealth, and remaining obligation to pay just that much for the remaining value of that related property.
That's right.
These three ththings are the only thing that can maintain the integrity of a circulation. Now, what happens then well, let's summarize that. So, a promissory obligation, where we monetize our production or wealth by promissory obligation, which are the only reasonable vehicle, because they're the only reasonable vehicle because any issuance of currency must have a related obligation to retire it from circulation, or we would have inflation. Is this any offense to us? Absolutely not, because it's allowing us to monetize future production that we could never monetize otherwise. Although I can't pay for the home immediately, I can own the home by paying it off as I consume of it. You, meanwhile, the true creditor, are paid in full. So everyone's needs and objects are satisfied to the greatest degree possible.
That's right. And it gives us opportunity to take advantage of the basically endless supply of resources and manpower to put those resources into use in whatever way, whether it's a television or a computer or a car or a house.
Yes, without impediment either. There's no exploitation. Now, what most people don't understand then is that all that the banking system does is they intervene upon our right to contract in such a manner. And so they only pretend to be creditors. They never, ever, ever give up any lawful consideration, which is equivalent to the property which is exchanged, which would comprise a debt to the banking system. If, for instance, we devised a branch of government and which would equate to this common monetary foundry, as I call it, what the common monetary foundry would do would certify my creditworthiness, and it would say that Mike is fully capable of paying the $83.33 a month as he consumes of this property, and it deducts it from my accounts, and it's credited you with $100,000 as soon as it's certified my creditworthiness, and then it's enforcing payment by automating it by the regular software that the banking system runs on. It's just doing the accounting of it. So what a banking system does is it pretends to be a creditor. And so it intervenes upon this relationship to say, no, Mike, you cannot issue Jason your obligation, your contract to pay $100,000 to him on your paper. It has to be issued on our paper. And so for assuming across the world, regardless of the currency it costs, if we issue physical money, it costs paper money. It costs in the neighborhood of $2 for every $100,000 to issue the money. So for $2, they issue evidence of my promissory obligation to you. Okay? Now the first crime against us is that rightly, as our common monetary foundry would, payments of principal belong to no one. What they actually represent is that I've paid off that much of a debt which you've already been paid for. So this $1,000 that I pay in the first year toward this home has no business being in circulation any longer. It's the property of no one.